Republicans constantly talk about being constitutionalists. They always want to follow the Constitution. And you know what? I can't argue with that. The reality is, after the January 6th attempted coup, what the panel report has shown is that there was support not only external, but internal to the Congress. So there are 140 something Congress people and senators that voted to support the coup by not accepting the election. They, even after the insurrection, even after we had people killed, even after they invaded the Capitol, there were Republicans who came into the House and Senate and voted to overthrow the election. That's a fact that we can all see. Now, the reality is none of those Congress people who were re-elected into Congress should be allowed to serve. And that is a constitutional issue. If we look at the 14th Amendment, Section 3, reads as follows. No person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector of president and vice president or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state who haven't previously taken an oath as member of Congress or as an officer of the United States or as a member of any state legislature or as an executive or judicial officer of any state to support the Constitution of the United States shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. But Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such disability. In other words, the Constitution says, if you supported, if you provided comfort to those who attempted to overthrow the government, those insurrectionists, you are automatically out of Congress. And the only way that you can get back into Congress is if, and only if, 2/3 of the Congress says it's okay. Therefore, there are 121 or so that were reelected into Congress. They have no right to serve. And it's something that we need to look into right now. And Michael Moore said it best. I want you to listen to this, and then we'll take it on the other side.
As we start with the committee's recommendation to bar Trump from office, we're doing so because you've also been calling for much, much bigger action relative to the more than 100 senators and House members who voted to overturn the election on January 6th, 2021. And by the way, who will be sworn in again to Congress in a couple weeks. You still feel that way?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah. What has just bothered me now for the better part of the last 2 years, now, obviously all what Trump did, he's now been called out not only as the instigator. It's not just about what he said from the podium in the park there, sending everybody down to the Capitol, but the report shows very clearly this was a plot that was hatched before the election. They were planning this chaos and this assault beforehand. He wanted the end game for him, this is before the election, was to be able to declare martial law, whether he won or lost, so that he would then stay in the White House. And he has a historical precedent for that as a New Yorker, because if anybody was here on 9/11 back in 2001, that was Election Day. And they had to close the polls by 10 a.m. They closed all the polls and canceled the election. And that election, you might be better remembering this, wasn't held for a number of months. And it was decided that Giuliani could continue as mayor, even though he was not legally mayor. And I think Trump living here and seeing how, wow, people actually went along with that and were okay with it. And there was no election for many months. and there was no new mayor, and so the old mayor stayed in office. This was his plan. When you read this report, his plan was to stay in office if necessary by martial law, and that he would have to declare because there was going to be this huge riot that he was instigating and his people were instigating. Incredible plot, a real coup attempt, and I think that. But to your question, I'm sorry it took so long to say that. The 147 Republicans who later that night, after they got the Capitol back in their hands, and we're going to continue on with certifying the election, 147 Republican members of the House and senators voted to overthrow the election, to overturn it, to not certify Joe Biden as the duly elected president of the United States. They went and voted. They put themselves on the record and said, no, we are going to do what these insurgents wanted earlier in the day, the ones who resulted in the deaths of Capitol Police officers and others, many injured. We're going to now give them what they want, and we're going to do it by a vote. No blood, or just a vote. But the vote violated the Constitution of the United States. Section 3 of the 14th Amendment says, if you participate in any way, in any kind of insurrection, rebellion, supporting one, or even just giving, quote, from the Constitution, quote, aid and comfort to those who are rebelling, you are not allowed ever again in your life to sit in any public office, whether that is Congress, whether that's the White House. And in fact, it goes to the whole thing takes it all the way down. And there's been many court cases on this over the years. You can't even run for county commissioner. You can't run for dog catcher if you participated in giving aid and comfort to the rebellion. That's what those 147 Republicans did. And then they can say, well, that was our right and we were elected, we can vote. Yeah, well, back in the Civil War, those who voted to secede from the Union and then went from being members of our Congress to the Confederate Congress and voted for the next 4 years to commit treason and terrorism and resulting in the deaths of nearly 800,000 Americans. They all tried to get back after the war was over. They all tried to get back into the real Congress, the U.S. Congress. And they had to pass this amendment mainly to stop them and say, you can never serve in office again anywhere. We need to enact this. We need to invoke the Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. And I put up a big list of all the pictures of those who did it that night and then got reelected last month. So they're being returned. Oh, there it is. Yes. And that's what they are. They're traitors. They attempted a coup. And these are the 121 who actually got reelected and are going to take an oath of office a week from next Tuesday. The same oath they violated when they voted to support the insurgency and the rioting and give the rioters what they wanted in that vote that night, 6 hours later, that night, and said, no, we vote to overthrow the government elected government of Joe Biden as the president. We're voting to make sure he never enters the White House after 7 million plus Americans by a vote margin of 7 million. He defeated Donald Trump. And I just think if we care about this country, I don't want January 3rd, the day they're going to take their oath of office. I don't want that to go by without somebody saying something. There's petitions online. People need to contact their members of Congress. Somebody stand up and say, we're all here today. It's the 118th, a new Congress. But you 121 who did this on January 6th, who provided aid and comfort to the insurgency, to the rebellion, I, in my conscience, cannot support that traitorous act that you committed.
I don't think it could have been said any better. So if we really wanted to follow the Constitution, as all of us want to, as Republicans like to hammer in our heads that we should be following the Constitution, then every single person who voted to support the insurrection by voting to overturn the election, not to accept the election, they should not hold not federal office, not state office, not local office, according to Section 3 of Amendment 14 of the Constitution of the United States. We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead, number one, subscribe to our channel, and number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.